Hernandez, and I'm pleased to welcome you to our fourth PLC this year on literacy, and it's Unlocking Complex Text, Morphology, and Syntax. And our presenters today are Kelly Yang and Michelle Wind from the Manalapan Englishtown District, and I will turn it over to them. Oh, just at the end of the session, I'll drop the PD certificate slash evaluation form into the chat. Please use an email that's a personal email, not a school email for that, because a school email could block your certificate coming to you. And I will also be putting in the chat at the end our next PLC session, which is the writing rope, which will be on February 26th at 4 p.m. So take it away, ladies.
Kelly, did you want to introduce yourself?
So I'm Kelly Yang. I am an ESL teacher in Manalapan, Englishtown Schools. I've been teaching ESL there since 1999, so a long time. And besides that, I went through Fairleigh Dickinson's Orton Gillingham training, so I finished that. And this is my colleague, Michelle. Michelle, you're going to introduce yourself quickly?
Yes, I'm Michelle Wind. I work for Fairleigh Dickinson University, and I also teach with Kelly. And our partnership came together when Kelly was being trained at Fairleigh Dickinson through our school district. And we just kept talking about ESL and struggling readers, and we really enjoyed collaborating. So we've been presenting for TESOL and for some NJIDA events, the New Jersey Dyslexia Organization. So we're happy to be here. I also just want to mention one of my mentors is here from the University of Laverne. Nancy Cushion-White's here, so I'm honored that she's here. She's very involved in the dyslexia organization as well. All right, Kelly is going to take us through our objectives for today.
Yes.
Is it on the screen, Kelly? Can you see?
Not yet.
Oh, let me check one more time. Okay. Give it one second.
All right, now we got it. Okay, so we have a rather hefty set of objectives today. We are going to be looking at morphology and syntax through the context of how learning more about morphology and syntax can help students to engage in and understand more complex text. So we're going to just look at some key concepts in English morphology. We're going to briefly look at some research on multilingual learners and how morphological development can help them. We're going to show you an instructional routine, and you're going to leave with a wealth of different types of activities and resources you can use. And then we're going to do the same thing for syntax. We'll explore some core syntax units, and we'll look at some instructional routines that you could use to help develop their syntactic awareness, their analysis skills, which will help them to unlock difficult sentences in text. At the very end, we're going to show you how morphology and syntax connect together to aid students in understanding complex text. So before we get started, we thought we would anchor us with looking at the WIDA standards and the language charts, and where is syntax and morphology, where do they fit? And you can clearly see with what I've circled that syntax is everywhere within these language charts and within our standards, from the word level to the paragraph level. Morphology is not as directly stated, but if you think about your expanded noun groups, your prepositional phrases, your variety of adverbs and predicates and all of that is directly related really to morphology at the end of the day. So it's all in there, right in our WIDA standards. And that just shows you, again, the same thing.
All right. So I'm going to take us through morphology, hopefully give you some practical application for your classroom. So just an overview of what a morpheme is. It's the smallest part of a word that has meanings. Bases are morphemes that hold the core meaning of a word, and there are two kinds of bases. There's free base and a bound base. So if you see here, a bound base must have a prefix or a suffix added to it, and a free base can stand alone. And in a lot of programs in school districts, we hear people calling them, I'm sorry, and the bound bases we hear school districts, a lot of teachers call them roots. But for this purpose, we're calling them bound bases. Just give me 1 second. And I just, oh, here we go. Bases and roots are sometimes used interchangeably in some school districts. An affix is a prefix or a suffix. It's a morpheme that has to be attached. Let me just move my screen here, to a base. So if you see here, a prefix is a morpheme that comes before a base and it adds meaning to a word. So a single base might have multiple prefixes. If you see here, we have react, distract, deconstruct. And a suffix is a morpheme that comes after the base and has meaning. And a single base may have multiple suffixes, like you see here with thankfully. It has the suffix ful and the suffix ly. We also want to just give you some background knowledge on inflectional suffixes and derivational suffixes. And this is really important for the students you're working with, in the sense that inflectional suffixes changes the tense, but the part of speech stays the same. So stomp and stomping, or beach and beaches. A verb stays a verb and a noun would stay a noun. But with derivational, it could change the part of speech. So float is a verb, but something that is floatable is an adjective. And that can cause a lot of confusion for students when they're reading complex text. And they are going to impact syntax, as we'll show you in the next part of this presentation. So we want to grow vocabulary through morphology. Children increase vocabulary using meanings that are familiar. So they understand bases and suffixes, and then they can infer and unlock the meaning of words that they've never seen before. So just an example like this in the word piglet. You see the suffix let here. Pronounced lit in a lot of words means little. So then you have little pig. When they come across the word owlet, if they see the let, they understand that would be a little owl. So they can transfer that meaning to other words to unlock a more nuanced understanding of what the words mean. Just to give us some background knowledge, vocabulary after 3rd grade, students really need to have morphological units to really read a lot of the text at those upper levels. If they don't understand the word parts in words, they're really going to be disadvantaged when it comes to vocabulary and comprehension. So they need explicit morphological instruction. For every word a student learns, there could be 1 to 3 related words that they can understand with more or less transparency. So something more obvious would be red, reddish, and something less obvious in pronunciation and meaning might be apply and appliance. And especially it gets more complex when the accent starts to shift. 60% of unfamiliar words encountered in the school and beyond are transparent, and students should be able to get the meaning of them. So if we start teaching them to unlock these parts in words, it's going to really expand their vocabulary and deepen their comprehension. And also, we added this slide. We just wanted you to know that having some familiarity with word origins and bases, it's going to really help with spelling. and especially like the irregular parts in words. So it's looking to enhance just vocabulary, understanding, and spelling as well. The three layers that make up the English language, we have the Anglo-Saxon, the Latin, and the Greek. And this is just to give you a little background knowledge. Greek would be more of those technical math and science words, and they would see that in more of their academic reading. Just to reinforce the importance of teaching morphological awareness, looking at words, we know that if we increase the repetition of the bases that we're teaching, they get more exposure, and you get more bang for your buck, as you would say. So if a student can recognize the base TRACT in one word, it increases their opportunity for repetition when they see it with different words that have different prefixes and suffixes. So if you look at this one base tract, you can see all the other words that can be created with that one base. As Pete Bauer says, if you learn one, we throw in a whole bunch more for free. And this is just quoting Ron Yoshimoto at one of the workshops he went to, said that knowing one base can unlock 60 vocabulary words. So it really is would help make your teaching much more efficient at building vocabulary if you're teaching these morphological structures. So Kelly's going to take us through linguistic transfer now.
Yes. So when we're talking about, I'm preaching to the choir, you are all ESL and bilingual people. And so we know that this concept of linguistic transfer is important. And whenever we can leverage positive linguistic transfer, we know that it's going to just aid students in their learning. It's just going to make their learning more rapid. So we wanted to show you in the area of morphology where you can expect to see some linguistic transfer. So here's just one more thing to drive home about why we want to develop morphological awareness for our multilingual learners. So there have been studies that find that our MLs are slow to develop high-level academic vocabulary. We all know that the students that have fossilized patterns in both their speech and their writing, they're using kind of the same very common vocabulary words, and we can't get them out of that pattern. So morphology can be a way to really work towards expanding the students' vocabulary. Like Michelle just showed us with the example of tract, there's a lot of bang for our buck when we do this. Vocabulary knowledge, more than other factors, is attributed to long-term success. And of course, we know that we need to know 85 to 90% of words to have adequate comprehension. So all of that combined with the fact that most of their text, when they get to the 5th grade and above, like 60% of the words I think we saw can be broken down into morphological units. So it is crucial. And you're going to see some of the examples that we give you later in this presentation are just loaded with morphologically complex words. This is very important. Let's look more specifically at some linguistic transfer. So you all know this part. We can apply language features from one language to the other. Students can transfer grammatical concepts, semantic concepts, morphology, spelling, etc. We all know that we're going to capitalize on positive linguistic transfer, but be aware that there is negative transfer, and we'll show you some examples of both in the upcoming slides. So positive transfer, many languages, more than just English and Spanish or English and Italian, have a Greek or a Latin layer, especially in those scientific words, but also, just we know like our Spanish speakers, a lot of that Latin layer they're very familiar with. most languages will have that have a Greek or Latin layer will have similar affixes, so their prefixes and suffixes will be very similar. So those are features that are going to be easier to teach the students that have that knowledge in their first language. Okay, so other things that are common, many languages have the S for the plural. Most languages have conjugation of verbs and subject-verb agreements. So these are concepts that students will readily understand. Many languages have verbs that change a little bit in spelling and pronunciation when the tense changes. So these are all concepts you can capitalize on as you're teaching, with those like derivational affixes. These are some examples of Spanish. And you can see the positive transfer that you could do when you're teaching roots like PLOR or MORT or form. They're right there in both languages. Same thing for our affixes. There's a lot of prefixes and suffixes that are almost the same. So knowing that, I think, is just very useful when we're teaching our students.
And Callie, just so that they know, there should be links in here, correct, for them to get to these resources?
Yes. So where you see bilingual glossary, NYU Steinert, there is a bilingual glossary with cognates and all of that you can click on and get to that. This was really cool to me when I started, and I had to stop myself because I couldn't show you every single language under the sun, but I picked Spanish and Russian just because they're common languages that a lot of our students speak here in New Jersey. But how cool is this? This shows you so nicely the Latin layer that even is present in the Russian language. Ukrainian, I've had a student who recognized a lot of words as we were reading novels together, and she'd be like, oh, I have a word just like that in Ukrainian. So, I think it's just really interesting what you can do with morphology, because it really can build on a student's first language. And you can also see in Russian, same thing. There are some prefixes and suffixes that are exactly or very close to being the same. Super cool. Right. So then, of course, there are false cognates, and we just need to be aware of that. Not every word that sounds the same in another language is going to have the same meaning. So when we're doing this kind of work, it is good to just do a little bit of research before you're teaching, and just to be aware of that. Let's see. What's some other negative things? Some languages do not create new words with prefixes and suffixes. And some languages actually have something called an infix, which is an affix in the middle of the word. So just being aware of that, I think is like powerful knowledge for us as teachers, that we know when we can expect something to easily transfer and when we might have to do some more explicit teaching.
All right, now we're going to walk you through some practical application for your classroom. So when teaching a base in your classroom and exposing your students to this kind of learning, you want the new learning to be as clear as possible. So if you're teaching the base tract, you want to teach, or I have the example port here. Port means to carry. So portable is a better, more transparent way to unlock the root, as opposed to using the word support. Same with phys and vid. It means to see with visible. You'd rather use that keyword as a sample than the word provide. When teaching it, it's helpful to put a card together with the base on the front, and then on the back have the meaning, a keyword, and the picture there. And help kids spell the base while tracing it helps and give the meaning. So you really want to connect the spelling to the meaning. So here's a script that we use in one of the OG programs we teach. It's really just explicit instruction that would be beneficial for all students. So this is the base. Like we said, we just included root for your reference. TRACT. You can tell them the origin. It comes from the Latin. TRACT means to drag or pull, as in the word tractor. Name and trace the base and state the definition. And we don't ask them to pronounce the base. So here we go. Out of context, since the pronunciation changes. So because the pronunciation may change, that's why we're going to spell the base. So Kelly, can you name the letters for the base TRACT and give the meaning?
TRACT, to drag or pull. And I would do that 3 times.
And that repetition is helpful for struggling readers as well as your multilingual learners. Anything else here?
And we all know, I think that that's just like a great way, like we always say with vocabulary learning, like we have to continuously recycle and repeat. So this is just another way to build that in.
Okay, so this is a really powerful morphological awareness activity you can do that involves oral language and really helps to for students to understand the meaning of words. So this is a script. This is one we often use at Fairleigh Dickinson. You know that words can have different parts, such as prefixes, bases, and suffixes. Today, we're going to talk about words with the base tract or TRACT. So the teacher would repeat the word. Now, we're having the student repeat the word a lot in this activity, orally have the students repeat back to us, whether you're in a small group or a whole group. It's really good for them to pronounce the word. And especially for students have working memory challenges, the repetition, sometimes by the time you're getting to the meaning of it and talking about the meaning, they might have forgotten the word. So it really helps to anchor them. So Kelly, say the word retractable.
Retractable.
What is the base in retractable?
TRACT.
Good. Say retractable.
Retractable.
What is the suffix in the word retractable?
Able.
Good. Say retractable.
Retractable.
What is the prefix in the word retractable?
Re.
Good. And what does re mean?
Back or again.
Good. So then at this point, you want to start incorporating some real life examples in there. So Kelly, say retractable.
Retractable.
Good. Retractable means to pull back. When you click on the top of a pen and it pushes back in, would that be retractable?
Yes.
Okay. Say retractable.
Retractable.
What if you use a pen that the tip does not pull back and stays in one spot? Would that be retractable?
No.
Okay. All right. Say retractable.
Retractable.
When you use a tape measure that you have to fold up by hand, is that retractable?
No.
When you have a tape measure that you can push a button and it gets pulled back into the holder, is that retractable?
Yes.
And this is just giving a few real life examples. And obviously the photographs or the images are helpful to solidify meaning.
Right. And
Kelly,
we all know when we use the Freyer models for teaching vocabulary that a lot of times we'll give examples and non-examples. So this really is something that Michelle's doing that feeds right into all of that vocabulary work.
and one more. And again, you could do this whole class or in small group as well. Kelly, when you see an overhang or an awning that has a button that clicks and it pulls back the awning into the house, back into the house, is that retractable?
Yes.
How about an umbrella or an overhang where it has to be taken down by workers by hand? Is that
No.
retractable?
Nope.
Okay. Any questions or comments with these activities so far for morphological awareness? Okay. And here is just showing an example of a word list with the base TRACT. What you would want the student to do is really mark up the word and break it apart into its morphological units. And really, it would be helpful if they have a space on the top where they can put that meaning in and write it in by hand. We included a crisscross strategy at the bottom, just showing how to unlock the meaning, even though here, like in the prefix distract, you would start with the meaning of the prefix and then give the meaning of the suffix, the base after. So let me show you an example how that crisscross strategy would work. So first we would underline the base. TRACT means to pull. So you'd want the students to all underline the base and then box that prefix. DIS means down or away. So distract means to pull away. So Kelly, when might your attention be pulled away?
When my dog starts barking.
Good. And then you would have the students read the list either silently to themselves, and then you can do a choral read of the list. And another thing that's really powerful, either in whole group or small group, is giving a paraphrasing or giving the meaning of one of the other words on the list and have the students touch the word and then have them chorally respond with the meaning. So this is just a really quick thing you can incorporate into your lesson. So after you read the word list, Kelly, can you touch the word on here that means to pull back?
To pull back. Yep. Retract.
What's the word?
Retract.
Good. So that would be something that you can just have them touch one or two words, and then they can really incorporate the meaning as they're reading the word list. You can incorporate meaning into every aspect of this type of lesson. This is just another activity that could be anchored with a morphology mat. We use these at Fairleigh Dickinson a lot. It's just a mat that says prefix, base, and then suffix on it. And you can have the students tap the word part as they're pronouncing it in their word and they're breaking it down. So if you dictate the word, if I say to Kelly, say extracted.
Extracted.
Kelly would say it as she's tapping on the parts of the mat.
So I would go extract, id. So I'd make sure that that id is really clear, because sometimes the kids will want to go like extracted, and that's not really isolating the suffix.
Okay. Repeat the word extracted.
Extracted.
Spell the prefix in extracted.
EX.
Good. She would tap on that part of the mat and then name the letters. And what does EX mean, the prefix EX?
Out.
Good. Say extracted.
Extracted.
Good. Spell the base.
TRACT.
Good. And what does the base TRACT mean?
To drag or pull.
Good. Kelly, say extracted.
Extracted.
Good. Can you tap on the suffix part of the mat? Spell the
Id.
suffix.
Good. ED.
Good. And what does ED mean?
It already happened in the past.
So what does extracted mean?
It means that you pulled out something already.
Excellent. Okay, pulling out of the past. So you don't have to go as in-depth or as intense with this, but the explicit language is really helpful, and I think the mat is especially helpful for students. And I can just say, as a mother of a student in third grade, my son is getting lists sent home with words with prefixes and suffixes, and it's unfortunate he's not being really taught how to break down the words into meaningful parts. So in the program they're using, every word's an isolated word. So it's really much harder to acquire vocabulary that way if every word is isolated. Here you can see the integration. The mat really helps you see the similarities between words with the same bases. All right, and just some tips for connected reading. After you teach a base explicitly, you want to help students see how to understand words, how they function in real language. So you always want to connect it to reading, either phrases or sentences or a short passage. It makes it less abstract and more concrete, and then it supports cross-linguistic transfer. And then it also reduces the cognitive load if you're putting that word into phrases. So if you see here, we broke the word into a sentence. And then I would have Kelly read the phrases first.
Mm-hmm. She clipped the dog onto a retractable leash.
Okay. All right. Now I want you to read read the sentence to find out why she clipped the dog onto a retractable leash.
She clipped the dog onto a retractable leash so he could roam but still stay close.
So this is just showing you different ways that you can put those bases into little phrases. Kelly, is there anything else you do when you're teaching this in your small groups of pull out with phrases or connected reading?
Yes, and we're going to show a lot of what I would do with this next would be the syntax piece, which we're going to go into. Yes.
Okay. So we're not going to spend, this is more for independent exploration, and this should all be linked for you. But we put together some resources that we think are really helpful for classroom practice. This is just an anchor chart or an activity. We included that morpheme mat here. And we usually blow it up on poster board and leave it in our classroom for reference. But if you're pushing into gen ed classrooms or you're working with and pull out with small groups of students, just taking the time to box the suffixes and prefixes for words that they're reading in text, just for them to stop and see, because a lot of times they just see a multisyllabic word and it becomes overwhelming, and that's when they start using guessing strategies.
Right. And
So
I'm going to
it's
say for
super
you,
fast.
even if you're not doing formal morphology lessons, you're going to find that you're going to be able to start doing this work incidentally as you're reading complex text with your students. And when you notice that they're struggling with a word, if it's a word that you can do that with, underline the base and box the prefix and suffix, the students are going to be able to start doing that on their own too.
I was doing a paragraph shrinking, like a partner reading activity. I was coaching in a classroom just last week, and the word ceremonial came up. And the kids called us over. They couldn't figure it out together. A partner couldn't help them. And I said, "Do you hear any bass in the word ceremonial?" And they couldn't connect it to ceremony. I just think there's such a need for that instruction. If the teacher just takes a little time to do this with a few key words in a passage that they're reading, it really would enhance meaning a lot.
And I'm also going to say to all of you that when you have, especially the older ESL students that have just moved to this country, they find learning like you're lifting the veil and making the English language more transparent. And they find it really interesting and fascinating to learn, because you'll go into this and they'll start learning like why things have a different pronunciation, why things are spelled weird, what words come from this language, what words come from that language. And it really helps them to make sense of the English language instead of just being like, oh, it's weird and there's a lot of things that don't follow the rules, but there are a lot of generalizations. And I think it's very helpful for your kids.
This is a mixed matrices that one of my colleagues at Fairleigh made, Dawn Dennis. This is really cool. When she's building word parts with older students, you can make a mixed matrix, and it really is an extension of that morpheme mat. It just includes a bank of prefixes, a bank of suffixes, and bases. Maybe you could do one. You can keep it very simple. This is a little more complex, but it's giving them this matrix and then having them just build words, seeing the meaning and build words that they can come up with. When I push into classrooms, we use a more simplified version of this. And I do a lot of that combination of that morphological awareness, giving them the mat and having them build and spell words. So this is a really interesting way that you can, guide them to spelling words and building and having really good conversations around the bases, port and rupt. Kelly, I think, found this somewhere. It's a sort of a simplified version of this, but if you want it to be a little more structured for students and simplified, you can give them a very simple foldable where they can put it on both sides and just, I think each one of these would build a word, distractible, distraction, subtraction, um, contracting. This is really good for students as well. And something I think they could probably do independently as a follow-up, right, Callie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is an affixo chart, another way if you wanted to make spelling more concrete and really deconstruct some of these words with these morphological units. This is an affixo chart I got from Catherine Grace's book. And it's really just showing that you can, say a word and really just break it down. They could have the word right there next to them, but break it down into the morphological parts. So it's really helping them see those units of meaning. I really like this. I think this is one of Kelly's activities, right, Kelly? It's a guided spelling activity, a word training activity.
So it's kind of similar to the what were they called? The word ladders that
Word
that
ladders, yeah.
Tim does. Yeah.
Krasinski, yeah, very
It's
similar.
it's similar to the word ladders, but this is just a morphological spin on it. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And again, like Kelly said, you have your own curriculum to teach. This is a really great way. If you do it for, what would you say, Kelly, 5 minutes before you start a passage or something before an activity, it could really ramp up and give them a lot of
Mm-hmm.
leverage for their reading
Mm-hmm.
and spelling. You want to speak to this, Kelly?
Yes. So I thought I would show you. I came upon a an idea for a modified Frayer that we all use, or vocabulary box, sometimes I call them, or word mat. But if you had a word like mistreatment, you could have the students do the prefix, base, root, or suffix in one. You can do the meaning, the sentence, the picture. Of course, you could alter it on your own to do like an example, a non-example, a synonym, an antonym. There's a lot. You all are the experts on this and know how to use these. But I just thought that this would be a good way to, like up the game on that.
And I just want to show you some pictures. This one is actually just taken online, but just showing you ways. This is my mission this year as a reading coach, going into those, especially those 3 to 5 classrooms, and going in, doing those, using those morphological mats, build words, vocabulary building, and get some of these morphology walls up and running. And then I told the kids, once they're up and running, if they start collecting words, putting them on Post-its on their Morphe mats, that I would give them their books bucks or whatever their school money is, so that they, every time they have, like, I think 2 or 3, I would give them some, like, other incentive points for this. But it's a good way to make sure they're transferring it and looking for it in their reading. UFly has a lot of great resources. I know everyone's probably familiar, if you're teaching in elementary school, with their phonics resources, but they have a lot of really great resources for morphology as well. These are some of the morphological trees they have.
And we're going to just skip through the resources. You can look at all of this on or did you want to show them one?
I just wanted, we have like 2 minutes. I just want to stop just to wrap this up before we transition out. There's a more mini matrix here. Membeans has some really great, I reference this a lot, even for correct meaning for some of the affixes and prefixes. This Morphe mapper is really cool. This is a great practical takeaway that you might even let kids use. You plug in a word and it breaks it down for you into the parts. Every word's not stored in there, but I think it's a really kid-friendly way of exploring words. Let me see here. And then here's a great Trevor list of different resources. Let me see. You can see they have the Greek, Latin, and then for the Florida UFly, the University of Florida Literacy Institute, they have morpheme frequency. So it's a really cool chart to show the morphemes by how frequent they are. I think these are really great references for you to really enhance your instruction. And is anyone familiar with the Morphology project? They have a bank of digital, like Google Slide lessons already made, very basic, but it would be a really great way to get started if you don't have resources that you can use. And then that's from the Morphology project. It's a prefix deck, a suffix deck, and here's an example of one of the lesson plans for it. I don't want to change it out of the slide mode here. But before we leave, I don't want to put Nancy Cushion-White on the spot. She is really an expert on morphology. I was wondering if she had anything else to chime in that we missed. Any other big takeaways from morphology for multilingual learners? I don't know if she's still on.
No, you're doing great. Keep up the good work.
Anything else you would share?
I don't want to interrupt your presentation, so
Okay.
I think you're doing a great job. Keep up the
Okay.
good.
Any other questions or anything anyone else wants to share?
Someone did ask in the chat if all of these activities were from the Orton Gillingham program, or are they from different ones?
Some
Yeah, go ahead,
are.
Kat.
I guess, Michelle, you can speak to that, right? Yeah.
Well, it's really structured literacy and explicit instruction. So it's more of a methodology, just explicitly teaching it. So they're more, it's more of a framework to use. So it's more multi-sensory strategies, and they're adapted from the programs that we're using. So we use them to tutor students in Orton Gillingham, but really this type of explicit instruction has been proven to work for any type of student. But yes, it is taken from the program we use at Fairleigh Dickinson. And it's a little more intensified for struggling readers, but we also use it at the University of Laverne in California. But we kind of gave you a simplified version that you could apply to whole class or small group.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone want to unmute or just put in the chat one takeaway, one resource, or one aha that you had? Any feedback? Just keep going.
Okay.
Well, there's a lot of positive feedback on
Okay.
these. So
Great.
Right.
Okay. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit. I mean, I still think you're going to see that morphology comes in everywhere, but we're going to look more closely at syntax. So go ahead, Michelle.
And then we're going to pull it together at the end.
Yeah, and then we'll pull it together at the end. So what is syntax? So syntax is the rule system that governs how words and phrases are arranged into clauses and sentences. Here, we're not talking about grammar. We're talking about the function or the role of words and phrases within a sentence, because that's going to really help students with their comprehension. You know, just teaching grammar in isolation isn't going to do much. But when we really talk about the function and the role of words, that's key. It's crucial for reading and writing. So that's what we said. Grammar's related, but it's not syntax. So why would
we were really talking, and in this session, we're really looking how it's going to help students understand, text at the sentence, paragraph, and passage level. Yeah. So it's really like how it's helping them, help their understanding of text.
Yes. So why would we teach syntax? Well, sentences that are complex and contain a large number of ideas or have unusual word order makes it difficult for students to comprehend what they're reading. What I always say is the further the subject and the predicate are from each other or from the beginning of the sentence increases the complexity. And, when you get into like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade and up text, they're packing, especially like when you're talking about your social studies and science textbooks, they're packing so many concepts into one sentence, and it just makes it very complex unless you know how to break down the sentence apart. So that's where syntax will really help your students. This is especially important for students who enter school with a limited oral language, because maybe as they're reading, they're not grouping the phrases and the clauses together as a fluent native speaker would. So this really is very helpful. So here's an example of why to teach syntax. So we have a sentence: when the dog suddenly lunged toward a squirrel, the black retractable leash snapped back into the handle. This would be a sentence that would be very challenging for a lot of our students. My students, I don't know about yours, if you ask them what was the subject, they'd probably say dog. They might, if they know the word lunged, they might say lunged. and miss the fact that the when the dog suddenly lunged is actually an expander. It's expanding the predicate, and that the leash snapped is the heartbeat of the sentence. So a few words about English syntax. English sentences follow a very consistent pattern. They're all based on subject first, predicate second. The subject tells who or what the sentence is about, and the predicate is the action. And then we have clauses, phrases, and adverbs that can give more information about the action, and we can have adjectives or describers that can give more information about the subject. And that's how we expand our sentences. And when we get into the three and the four, those expanders, expanding the predicate and the describing words, describing the subject, that just is what makes your sentences complex. So this is a slide to show you briefly the part of the speech formally and what we would call it in a functional term. So when I teach syntax, yes, I teach them pronoun, noun, verb, adjective, but we're really focusing on the function in the sentence. So like a pronoun becomes a substitute namer. Your noun.
We'll show examples of this.
Your verb is your predicate. Your adjective is a subject describer. And some of your clauses or adverbs are going to expand your predicate. So they're a predicate expander. So the building blocks of a sentence, your bare bones sentence is a noun, a subject, who, and a verb, what they're doing. And here's an example. The kitten sleeps. So when we teach the students, we're teaching them that the subject names the person, place, thing, or animal that the sentence is about, and the predicate tells the action. And we happen to, these particular cards are from a program called Project Read. This is what we use in our district. We use a line for the subject and those little mountains for the predicate. And I like to always have the person, place, thing, or animal under the subject to anchor this concept for the students with, I do that little person running for the predicate action. And that, I think, anchors the concept. So we're going to talk a little bit more about subject. And the first tricky thing that we're going to talk about when we're talking about subject is the references, the synonyms and the pronouns that occur throughout a text. That's where students can get tricked up, right? So if you look at this sentence, it's about Champ, a monster that lives in Lake Champlain in Vermont. But look,
and this is taken straight from your instructional materials, right, Kelly? Straight from Storyworks.
I just recently did this story with my students. Well, this text with my students. It's from Storyworks magazine. I believe this one was from the Storyworks, the third grade one. And if you look at it, we have the beast looked more than 180 feet long. But then we have like his boat. Who is his? It was the captain, but definitely longer than any animal he had ever seen. So you'd have to know that was the captain. But then it had big eyes and a red streak around its neck. We would have to know that the its are referring to what the its would be referring to. And then like the giant monster would be a synonym for the beast or the creature. So you can
Kelly,
see
I think that's that one his, right? I think
yeah,
that one
we have three. We have three. Yeah, we don't need the he, but the beast, the beast, the creature, and the giant monster are all three synonyms that appear in this passage to refer to the monster. And then we have it. And students don't always understand that. So I'd like to do lessons where the students will, once they know the subject of the passage, as they read, they're going to circle or underline or highlight all of the words that refer or substitute the subject. So this is my favorite little passage. I wanted to show you like how important it is. This is about a crocodile. It's from Project Read. And you can see, though its mouth is big, a crocodile can swallow only small animals. Well, that's pretty apparent. But look at this sentence. When it wants to eat something big, it breaks it into. And there's all those it's. And so to teach the students how to figure out which it is referring to the crocodile and which it is referring to something else, and what is that something else that it's referring to, is tricky for the students. And you get a lot of conversation around the text when you do this work.
And it raises their awareness so that they're more aware of noticing these things when they're
It
reading.
really does. And this carries into fiction text too, when we have the characters that are being interchanged with the he and the she. And it's a source of confusion for many of our students. And, you know, there are a lot of texts, once you realize this, that have synonyms. And it's important to know that the synonym is still referring to the subject.
And something simple, like you don't have to do a whole lesson on this. Just as they're reading, stop and say, who is the creature referring to, or who is it? And, and just pointing back and just doing that 2 or 3 times while reading, whole class or small group, or doing this before reading can really help provide the scaffold students need to access the text and its meaning.
And you're always going to tell the student that pronouns don't come out of nowhere. If you're not sure what the pronoun is, you got to go back and read either the beginning of the sentence or the sentence before. I kind of tell them it's a rule, like authors aren't allowed to do that. And for the most part, they don't, especially not in children's literature. Okay, so the next thing we want to think about when we're talking about the subject is describing words. So we can expand the subject by using adjectives to describe the subject, the noun. In English, we all know that adjectives are placed before the subject. So that's a source of confusion for some of our students, especially our Spanish speakers, who the placement is reverse. But these are just some examples: delicious, slow, young. We're going to show you a little bit more in the next few slides of how you could break this down for your students. So the first type of adjective that we teach is looks like or physical. That comprises size, shape, color, texture, taste, and smell. Here are some words that you might show your students, work with them, do activities around these to teach them. And here's an example. We're going to go back to this chart many times, but you can do word sorts with adjectives, either words that you give the students or they can find them in a text. The next type of subject describer is we call it behavior and personality. So these are your character trait type words, or your words like for animal behavior. And you can see some of them written here, like your character, friendly, happy, kind, but, stingy, irresponsible, and mischievous. Lots of great words. Number words are also describers. So it could be straight out numbers, or you're going to see on the next page, I think we're going to show you like several, many, few. Those are also number words. And they're important to know because, that affects the meaning of the sentence. You need to know what is a few, what is a couple, what are several.
And these kind of words, throughout a passage can really confuse a student.
Ownership is another kind of describer. So that's, of course, your possessives. And so just a little graphic organizer to show how the students could remember the apostrophe S and the S apostrophe. And we'd have like Pam's and the dogs. And I don't know, they understand that, but then they don't understand it. We have to come back to that all the time. The last type of describer, we could go on and on. There are more describers than this, but the last one we're going to touch upon is called a set apart. This is a particular term in Project Read. It's the kind of, it's a clause, it's a phrase, and you create them when you have a vague or general subject. And like Michelle, just show the picture because that's the best way to show it. You have a bunch of dogs, they're all sitting. Well, how can I describe one of the dogs to set it apart from all the other dogs? So if I have a sentence, the dog sits, I don't know which dog. So, now the dog with the blue bandana sits, or the dog with the brown scruffy fur sits, or the dog with the pointy ears or the floppy ears. This is important to know and teach because, like I said in the beginning, the farther the subject and the predicate are from each other creates confusion when you're reading text.
And this is a perfect example you can see from the first bullet down to the last, how a student can get lost in all that language.
Mm-hmm. Okay,
so
Michelle,
now I'm
we're
going to
going
take you to the predicate, expanding the predicate. Again, we're just, giving you a little bit. There's so much more we can get into. We only have an hour and a half. So we just picked the parts of syntax we think would help your students most with memory, with meaning. So this is also from Project Read. We thought it was a very tangible, concrete way for children to see how they could expand a predicate. Just like you saw that little predicate symbol that they use, they actually have 4 mountains here for the 4 types of ways you can expand a predicate. So we're going to take one sentence and we're going to expand it using each of these expanders. So first we're going to look at where. Again, you don't have to use Project Read's terminology, but this is a really great anchor chart to have around your room and notice in text. So here are some where starter words, above, along, around, after, beneath. This is a great poster to keep in your room. Just to show you here, the snow leopard hunts. So we can ask questions for students to expand this to tell more about where the snow leopard hunts. So the subject is leopard, the predicate is hunts, and we're going to use the predicate, the starter word along. So we included a visual here. The snow leopard hunts along rocky mountain ridges. So this is just showing them different ways. Again, you could brainstorm and pick 2 or 3 of these and have kids orally tell you just by looking at the image in a text in a part of a section of your reading, and really and for recall of comprehension of a text, asking these kind of questions to pull out more information from them. Mm-hmm. So this is the expander.
Right. And I was just going to say, Michelle, what I do with my students, I do teach each of these expanders that Michelle's going to show you separately. And part of the work that we do is marking up sentences just the way we have it marked here on this slide. But then you can also take sentences that are difficult from the text that you're reading and do this work with the students too.
We call it lift the lines. We always try to find one complex sentence from a passage or a section of a passage we're about to read. We lift it and we kind of deconstruct it before we read it, and it really helps anchor their reading. Mm-hmm. Now we're going to look at how. So the how words are, ly words, like, with, without. So again, here we have that bare bones sentence, the snow leopard hunts. And if we wanted to use an ly word to expand it, you would say the snow leopard hunts quietly. Kelly, can you expand one using like, with, or without?
Yeah, so I would say like is really a great one to teach because they love it. Second graders typically learn similes in their classroom anyway. So then you get like the snow leopard hunts like I can't think of anything with like off the top of my head, but with energy, without a noise. When I do the like, I do on purpose ones that students would be able to get, like Lucy swims, and so you could do like a dolphin, like a shark, and those are really like simple ones for your elementary school students to be able to use. Like as they get older, they can be more complex. Using like requires a little bit of background knowledge, so it can be tricky for students.
Yeah, we're just kind of front loading you with all this
Yeah.
information, but it's a lot to digest. Another expander is the when expander. Here are some more words you can use to anchor these type of expanders: when, since, before, after. So again, there's your bare bone sentence. Using the word as, the snow leopard hunts as the sun rises. And that's the predicate expander for when, and the starter word is as. So even just asking questions to dig a little deeper, just giving students that sentence stem, even for comprehension recall is really powerful.
Yeah. And a lot of your students won't understand the concept of two things happening at the same time. And so as is really powerful for comprehension of that concept.
Yeah. And then finally the why, that tells why. To, so, for, and because. So the snow leopard hunts using to find food. And you could, after put these all together, the snow leopard hunts quietly along the Rocky Mountain ridges as the sun rises to find food. So there's all your expanders together. We wanted to touch a little bit on mobility, just showing that the expanders can be moved outside the predicate area and be added to the beginning of the sentence. You typically don't want to separate that subject and predicate, but we'll just show you an example of this. We could take that when expander. And again, as you know, we're using this functionally. So if you have a sentence, you might say to the kids, touch the phrase or underline the phrase that tells where the snow leopard hunts. Underline the phrase or put a triangle or a box around the phrase that tells why the snow leopard hunts. Which word here tells how he hunts. And this is just comprehension at the sentence level. And syntax can really help you with that. So we're just saying, let's take that when expander, and these, this takes a lot of instruction to get here, but once you teach these expanders, you can show them how we can move that when expander to the beginning of the sentence. So instead of the sentence could start with, as the sun rises, the snow leopard hunts quietly along the Rocky Mountain ridges to find food. And we just point out, you have to add a comma and capitalize the first letter when you do move that predicate expander to the beginning. So another example is we can move that Y expander to the beginning. To find food, the snow leopard hunts quietly along the Rocky Mountain ridges as the sun rises. Kelly, I think we could keep moving, but this is just, I don't know if you want to spend some time on this example, the wind gusted. I don't know if you want to put in the chat if you're here, can you add to this the when starter word, when, to expand when the wind gusted. If you see this image here, this photograph, you want to type it in the chat. Maybe we could share some out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Does anybody have one?
And then what's really great about this is there's not one answer.
Yeah.
You have any in the chat?
Nope, I didn't see any. Or
All
maybe
right.
people are typing. But when the storm hit,
Yeah.
as thunder struck, that you could go in a million different ways to do it.
And let's move this expander to the beginning. When the storm hit, the wind gusted. Again, we have to,
And, again, this is super important for comprehension. It's also part of our WIDA standards. These are complex This is text, this is complexity, sentence complexity and sentence variety. So that's also what we're teaching here.
This is just showing one more example. When the storm
Mhm.
hit, the wind gusted as the people huddled together.
Oh, and we have like during the vicious snowstorm. Beautiful. Thank you.
And then just showing you want to add that comma, and if you're going to use this mobility, you have to,
Mhm.
capitalize the beginning, uncapitalize the T and the. And then this is just a more sophisticated example Kelly's going to walk you through, taken straight from a
Yes.
text.
So this is the same passage about Champ, the sea monster in Lake Champlain, but I wanted to show you an example of something from a text. So the sentence was, in the early 1700s, when settlers from Europe arrived in the area, the Abenaki warned them not to make too much noise near the lake. And so you could go with the students and have them underline, find the subject and find the predicate, who did it, what did they do. You can find the when expander in the early 1700s. You can find another when expander when settlers from Europe arrived in the area. And you can say, why did they warn them not to make too much noise near the lake? But then you can really get into this by looking at, who is them referring to? Who are the Abenaki? Where is Europe? What does warn mean? Why might you warn someone? So you can do a lot just with this one sentence.
Kelly, I would even think you could, after reading this passage, you can just have them tell you the bare bone, what happened, who and what.
Mhm.
And then you can prompt them and say, well, when was it? And then build it out that way too.
Mhm.
So they're not overloaded with language.
Yep.
I know some teachers have kids do a whole like a summary or a retailer response just in bare bones sentences, just to get the framework out, and then they build out with these
Mhm.
expanders, and then add in the
Mhm.
subject describers.
Mhm.
So it's a really nice way um, to build your writing. Here's another one. We'll just show you another example. Again, we're
Yeah.
just skimming the surface here with this
And I
work.
just wanted to show you this one because, like, the examples I'm showing you are sentences where the subject and predicate are either removed from each other or not at the beginning of the sentence. And that's when students get tripped up. So look at this one. I mean, like, one of the men would be a describer, but Frank Worsley would be our subject. And then we have another describer, a skilled cartographer, before you get to the predicate studied. And then you have, the rest of your sentence. So, and then there's a lot. There's a morphological piece. What is a cartographer? What are records? What's a diary? Why is endurance in italics? So there's a lot you could do with these sentences to make
And
sure
this
that,
is, yeah, this is at
and
the
this is
sentence
a
level.
lot of content information just in one sentence, a lot of vocabulary, a lot of syntax.
And another thing, just looking at this, you could pull out these, expanders and, you could just read them as phrases before the reading and really get that comprehension at the phrase level down first.
And that also helps with students' fluency.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one activity you can do, oh, here's my little paragraph from it. That's what they think Champ looks like. Champ's really cool. But you can read a piece of text and have students identify the predicate and the expanders. You can give them a word bank afterwards. So you can see in here, we kind of highlighted some of the where, when, why, how phrases. We've marked the predicate words, and then the next page is going to show you what that might look like in a sort. And so you can see, the students might have their predicate words, they might have
Or
their
after reading.
expanders. You can use these to guide writing afterwards. They can obviously be used to aid in comprehension. Sometimes I do. Do we have the other one? Oh, yeah. And then we could do one like that. Sometimes I do a little chart with describing words, subject, and predicate, and that also helps with writing about the text. So there's a lot of different ways you could use sorts to elevate the comprehension after you read a text. This is just another way if you don't want to have the students underline and mark up the text. You could do it in by parsing the sentence using a little grid-like organizer. So in this one,
This is a modified from Nancy Hennessy's book.
yeah. So in
but-
this one, you can change the labels up at the top. Like this particular one, we have who or what is doing what, to whom or what kind, when, where, why, how. But you would change the labels to match whatever sentences you're doing. So in this
Oh,
sentence,
look at this. This is complex. This is a complex sentence.
So in this sentence is from The Jacket by Gary Soto. The next day when I got home from school, I discovered draped on my bedpost a jacket the color of day-old guacamole. Wow. That's
So do
quite
you
a
want to show them what questions you might ask me to help me get some comprehension from this?
Right. So we might say like, who is this sentence about?
It says I, but it's Gary.
It's Gary. So that I and knowing who is I in a story is really important. And then what was Gary doing? So you might have kids at first saying, he got home. And you have to understand that the next day when I got home from school, it's not the subject predicate, but discovered is. He discovered. So then what did he discover? A jacket. What kind of a jacket? Yeah, the color. And then you can talk about what is guacamole and what does guacamole, what color is it? And then where was it? When did he discover it?
And yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that. I mean, I could see a lot of kids getting confused with this.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And this is just a modified version of all the work we're showing you here with these expanders that one of our colleagues, Christine Delmas, did. She created these worksheets for our district. I know, Kelly, you use a lot of this,
Mm-hmm.
right? You use a lot of this with Charlie Haynes' work, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that's a little bit beyond what we're doing with you today, because today our focus is really on how syntax can help in reading. But syntax
This can be used after reading, right? Maybe for
also be used to help students with writing.
Yeah, and this is just another way. We have a deconstructed sentence that has all these parts. And this is showing, we had the activity, I think this is from the Hennessy book also. We have all the sources at the end, but we thought for multilingual learners, it would be better to work at the phrase level because I was having trouble when it was all the words here. And these are, what grade is this? Is this from Common Lit? What grade was this, Kelly?
This is Common Lit. This is a 5th grade text. I tried to pull most of the text that we used today from 4th and 5th grade level because I didn't know if we were going to have teachers that were middle school, high school. So I tried to do like a common ground. But you can see, I think the 3rd to 5th grade texts are pretty complex.
So if you start with this if you lift one line, you put index cards or you just put on a slide, and you have the kids, build out, find the word with the capital and the period to get the frame of your sentence, find the bare bones, and then build on out. And you can have a lot of conversation at these pieces, where's the who, what, what tell, and then you can put it together when. So here's the whole sentence. Every year, more than 1 million people suffer from these life-threatening medical issues. So who is the sentence about, Kelly? What's the subject of your sentence? Oop, did we lose that?
Sorry,
Yeah.
I was on mute for a second. I have a hungry dog in the back.
We'll through it. But you can see those same kind of questions we've been showing you with all these expanders, here. So anyone, before we're going to close it out with syntax, I think we'll keep going, Kelly, right? Because we're towards the end here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kelly's going to take you through the synergy between.
We wanted to show you some examples of how you can put all of this together. So within one text, you can pull out both morphology and syntax. And so that's what we wanted to show you. If it wasn't already clear, I think it was.
And I think just pulling it, we're going to kind of just showing it to you together. But this is good for your ML students. But if you're pushing into a regular classroom, all students could benefit from this type of scaffolding before reading grade level texts.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just showing you an example. I pulled this from ReadWorks, but this is what I was showing you about that partner reading when I was in a third grade class. Memorable, unusual, like some kids, just taking 30 seconds to show how unusual connects to usual, achievement, achieve, nation, national, just showing all these. A lot of times kids don't see the commonality of the words. So just something simple, pull out one word, maybe if memorable or memorial is in the text, and showing them all the different variations of this word, related words. Showing them the parts of speech. Just doing this is going to really be much more efficient for expanding vocabulary than teaching one vocabulary word in isolation. These are just words we pulled from the passage. What could this take you, Kelly? 2 or 3 minutes before reading? Just pull it out. It's really 3 words, and then you're adding those morphological pieces on. And look at that. That's 9 words right now. And then it's going to enable them to start noticing these word parts in other words.
And that's what I was going to say. The more that you do this, you'll have your students come in and tell you about words that they found in their science and social studies lesson, or if you push into class, you'll notice these examples and the synergy between subjects. It's really important and amazing for the students. So believe it or not, this text is a 5th grade level text. You might think it's more higher level, but it's not. It was extremely difficult. I did this recently with 5th grade. And so what you might do if you had a passage like this, it happens to be from Common Lit, is just for you yourself as a teacher, look at the words that are morphologically complex. So everybody take a look. You can see it bigger. We have prominent, constitutional, Confederate, persuaded, throughout even detective. There's so much.
But even you have Confederate and Confederacy right here.
Overturned.
So just having those 2, yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's just this particular passage is secede. There's so much in this passage that's morphologically complex.
Information and inform, because that comes up again through the end of the passage.
Mm-hmm. And so this is just an example of, you might pull one of the words out and deconstruct it, break it apart, teach the meaning of that word in the passage, but then there are all these related words.
And then see, like she lifted a line, that one sentence.
Yeah. So I lifted that one sentence. And then we're going to look at that one sentence again with now thinking about the syntax. So we already had decisive. That was our morphologically complex word. But if you look at the next page, we can just look at that sentence. As a result, even though the South was outnumbered, it won a decisive victory. This is a tricky sentence because as I was reading it, I was like, well, as a result is telling me why. And even though the South was outnumbered, it's also telling me why. But I don't know as a result of what. So I actually have to go back and read the sentences before that to find out the answer to as a result. So it's a really complex sentence to figure out.
And just doing something like this, where you're connecting it back to send to information, just doing this kind of work once or twice in a passage could be really powerful.
Yeah. And then you look at that sentence and it's like, what is the subject? Well, it's it. Well, who is it? Well, it's actually the South. What did the South do? It won. What did it win a victory? Well, what kind of victory? Decisive. And then you can talk about, are there other kinds of victories? What is a decisive victory? And then you can read back and find out the as a result, and even though the South was outnumbered. And then you can, once you've done all of that, have the students try to, either by themselves or as a group, rewrite the sentence with simpler words. So you have that difficult sentence, but now we can rewrite it. Because Rose gave the information to the South, they won the battle clearly, even though they had fewer soldiers.
And then what's great about this, having a student, you could use those questions, say, like just Kelly just said on this slide, and prompt them with those questions to have them paraphrase each part of that to get this. So it really breaks down how they can break down the sentence. So you can use those questions to have them rephrase each piece of this and then put it into their own words. So I think we're finished just in the nick of time here.
Yeah, that was great.
If you have any questions, we'd love for you to unmute or chat or anything, any questions you have. We have our sources here at the end.
And we will tell you that we're going to do a deeper dive into syntax with a focus on writing at the spring conference. So if you're interested, you can come and see us then again.
If you're interested in more syntax in May.
Wow, that was really amazing, ladies. I learned like so much. So this is really a jam-packed presentation. So I thank you so much. I did put in the chat the link to the evaluation survey and the PD certificate. I also put in the chat the PDF of the slides from today, so you can open that up and download it. I'm also going to put in the chat our next session, which is on the writing rope, and the link to Eventbrite to register for that. And again, thank you so much for everything today.
Our pleasure.
And please feel free to email us if you have any questions or you want to discuss anything mentioned here.
All right, and remember, this will be up on our NJTESOL-NJBE professional development site. So if you want to share it with your colleagues, because I think this would be beneficial to almost anyone in teaching. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.